You are listening to True Crime Twins, a true crime podcast hosted by Chloe and Melina Cantor. True Crime Twins is distributed by Glassbox Media and is part of the Crawlspace Media family. Welcome back to True Crime Twins, where we use our occupational and academic backgrounds in criminology and medicine to tell you crime stories each week. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Melina.
Thank you for joining us for another week of True Crime. Today's crime story is that of a Jane Doe, dubbed Granby Girl. We are joined by former police chief of the town of Granby, Lou Berry, who now works as a private investigator. You've probably heard him on other shows talking about his work with the nonprofit organization Investigations for the Missing. Hi, Lou. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to have you on to talk about this case. Lou and I will discuss various cases that we're interested in, and this one I find particularly interesting just because both of us did work for the town where this Jane Doe was found. She is the only unidentified decedent in Hampshire County, Massachusetts, and you served as the police chief for the town of Granby between which years?
From 1987 to 2010.
Granby Girl, who was believed to be in her late teens to mid to late 20s, was a 5'4" girl with dirty blonde hair. She had a overweight build. She was found by loggers off of Amherst Street in Granby on November 15th, 1978. When you joined the Granby Police Department as chief, how was this case sort of brought to your attention? Was Granby the primary investigative agency, or was it with the Massachusetts State Police?
The involvement of our department at that time was extremely minimal. We had a very sketchy, I guess, or incomplete folder on the case, very minimal information on it, because back then any serious crime was handled by the state in this town. So the involvement of the department, like I said, was very, very minimal. They responded to the initial scene and then did some scene securing later on and everything. But as far as investigations go, not being here then, I'm not sure exactly how much they were involved with the actual investigation by the state. But going by the records that we have, it wasn't a heck of a lot.
I served as a department head for a completely separate, non-related department for that town, but we would periodically meet with every other department head just to discuss matters that were relevant across departments. But when the police chief, when he was presenting, I would always say at the end, so what about any news of the cold cases? And he told me that all of the files were stored in an area that wasn't proper and you needed hazmat gear or something to access them. Can you confirm that?
The police department at the time was housed in the town hall, which was built as a school back in the late 1800s and served as the high school for a number of years, and then became the town offices. And the police department was housed in the basement of that building. And at some point in time, I'm not sure when, as again, I wasn't in the town yet, the town was required by the state to have vaults. So they built a brick 2-story structure, if you will, on the back of the town hall to house the vaults. Unfortunately, because it's record storage, they couldn't have any outside ventilation there. So the only way to keep moisture from building is, anytime you have a building like that, where brick building with 3 sides are exposed, you're going to get moisture buildup, was dehumidifiers. And unfortunately, over the years, the dehumidifiers oftentimes weren't functioning, and the records became wet, moldy, and over the years, it became, the air was so disgustingly moldy. Fortunately, that particular file, as well as a couple other files, sudden deaths, I removed from the file and kept in the file cabinet. What minimal files they were that the department had were out of that vault. So the files were separated and secured, and I assume still are.
The police chief of Granby at the time of this discovery was Chief John R. Kirchhoff. He had commented to the local paper that the body was discovered about 1/8 of a mile off of Amherst Road, 1/2 a mile south of Route 116. I believe that might be a typo because 116 is Amherst Road. So I think he meant or they probably just misprinted. It's supposed to be Amherst Street. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was found off of Amherst Street. Amherst Street joins Amherst Road. And actually, where they meet, Amherst Road then turns into Amherst Street also. So Amherst Road actually ends at Amherst Street. And Route 116 or Amherst Road becomes Amherst Street at that point. But her body was found on off Amherst Street, about 500-600 feet into the woods.
The body was discovered at about 5 o'clock p.m. that Wednesday afternoon near a gravel pit in a heavily wooded area. Now in 2022, Amherst Street is quite developed. I wonder if now where her body was would be a modern day house or a yard.
I would say the exact spot is probably still wooded because the houses don't go back that far. In other words, the building has been done right along Amherst Street. So I don't know that that area really has changed. That particular spot, anyways, has changed all that much.
Kirchhoff said that women's clothing was found, including a green sweater that had a bird on it. All of the clothing was sized 14 to 16, which would lead them to believe that she was heavier set. Just for context, I typically wear size 4. I don't know if maybe sizes were a little bit different. Back in the 70s, they were a little bit higher. So I probably would have been considered maybe a 6 or an 8 back then. But that indicated that she was heavier set, although the only thing left were her skeletal remains, according to Chief Kirchhoff. He also said the body was not accompanied by a wallet, pocketbook, or any other material that would help identify the woman or girl. Is there anything else that you can tell us about how the crime scene was found and what was left behind?
The girl, the victim, had apparently been dragged from wherever the person parked on Amherst Street to where she was located by a leather belt that was wrapped around her neck. Her neck was broken, whether that was done prior to her death or the cause of her death or part of the cause of her death or during the removal to the spot. I don't know. But actual cause of death was a bullet wound to the head. Other than that, the most distinctive article, if you will, was the shirt. It had a design on it, distinctive design on it that was almost, you'd almost say something a child would wear. It was a green swan. The shirt itself was short sleeved and had a green collar and a green, almost like an underneath part that looks like I don't know how to describe it, but the outer part was like a green and white check, and then underneath was green, and then it was this green swan embroidered on the front of it. So that was really the most identifiable item, and I think the one that gave them the most hope at the time that she would be identified. Unfortunately, she never has. The only other notable thing I can think of is they say very poor dental work might just so it would indicate perhaps someone who didn't have a lot of money or didn't have a lot of exposure to dental care or whatever.
The autopsy was performed the next day, that Thursday, by Dr. William Dean, who is the medical examiner, and Dr. George Katzis, who is the state pathologist, and Dr. Stanley Swartz, who was a forensic dentist. It makes sense he was called in if her 2 front teeth were clearly decaying to determine what level of dental care she had received in her lifetime. Apparently, x-rays were taken at Holyoke Hospital as part of the autopsy, which confirmed at that time that the woman was in her early 20s. I don't know what exactly they would base that off of with her bones. What do you think, Melina?
It could be bone density or just like when the growth plate closes in particular bones is my best guess.
Do you think the science could be different now as far as guessing someone's age based on bones?
It's unclear, but I do think that the science has changed now in terms of being able to do more digging with DNA research. I was actually wondering just now if they have her DNA on file.
I believe so, yes. I believe she was exhumed a couple years ago, and they did take DNA. It's been uploaded into the databases also.
The post-mortem interval, which was basically the time of death, was estimated to be 3 to 12 months that she was out there in those woods. Was there anything about how she was killed, which was confirmed to be by a gunshot to her left temple? Was there anything about how she was killed that says something about the offender?
I don't believe so. It doesn't really tell us a lot, unfortunately. I know at the time they did an extensive search of all the surrounding because of the many colleges nearby. They thought maybe it was a student at first, and then there was somebody came, well, maybe it's someone that was hiking along one of the trails, and no one was reported missing that matched that description, unfortunately. I wouldn't want to draw any conclusions from the method of death.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Think back to sex ed for a moment. You probably learned all about how to prevent pregnancy, but what about how to plan for it? That's why Modern Fertility was created. It's an easy and affordable way to test your fertility hormones at home with a simple finger prick. Mail it with a prepaid label, and you'll get your personalized results within 10 days. You'll get some insight into your hormone levels, your ovarian reserve, aka how many eggs you have compared to other women your age, and other important fertility factors. The results go deep into what every hormone means, and you can also download the results to review with your doctor for the next steps. Traditional testing can cost over $600, but Modern Fertility gets you the same info at a fraction of the price. And if you go to modernfertility.com/TCTwins30, you can get $30 off your test. Plus, you can get reimbursed for the test through your FSA, HSA. If you want kids today, or maybe one day in the future, clinically sound info about your body can help you make the decision that's right for you. I personally tried Modern Fertility. It was very approachable and the instructions were so clear. I was able to do it in the comfort of my own home with a simple finger prick. I just had to kind of put some blood drops on this little card. It was so user-friendly. The package and label were all ready to go. The results came in, I think, less than 10 days. And the way that the results were explained, it was keeping the layperson in mind. It was explaining what everything means exactly and what the combination of certain things mean. And it's just an invaluable resource. And I'm so happy in the end that I went through with it. And I can show my doctor the results the next time I go. Right now, Modern Fertility is offering our listeners $30 off of the test when you go to modernfertility.com/TCTwins30. This is a limited time offer for $30 off. That means your test will cost $169 instead of the hundreds or thousands it could cost at the doctor's office. Get $30 off your fertility test when you go to modernfertility.com/TCTwins30. modernfertility.com/TCTwins30.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now